In the shadowed valleys of the ancient kingdom of Eldoria, nestled between the jagged peaks of the Iron Mountains and the whispering forests of the Whisperwood, there lived a man who would become known as King Thorn. His true name was Thorne Blackwood, born not in the gilded halls of royalty, but in the mud-strewn streets of a forgotten village called Hollowbrook. It was the year 1427, a time when the world was gripped by the remnants of the Black Death, and kingdoms rose and fell like autumn leaves in the wind. Eldoria, once a prosperous realm under King Harlan the Just, had descended into chaos after his untimely death from a poisoned chalice. Factions vied for power, borders were redrawn in blood, and the common folk suffered under the weight of endless wars and famines. Thorn was the son of a blacksmith, Elias Blackwood, a broad-shouldered man whose hammer strikes echoed through the village like thunder. His mother, Mira, was a healer, skilled in the arts of herbs and poultices, but her knowledge could not save her from the plague that swept through Hollowbrook when Thorn was just 12. Elias, heartbroken and hardened, taught his son the forge's secrets: how to temper steel, bend iron to one's will, and endure the scorching heat that mirrored life's trials. "Strength isn't in the muscle alone, boy," Elias would grunt between strikes. "It's in the fire that doesn't consume you." As Thorn grew, so did his ambitions. At 16, he was already taller than most men, with a frame forged from labor and eyes as sharp as the blades he crafted. Hollowbrook was no place for dreams. It was a speck on the map, raided periodically by bandits loyal to no lord. One fateful night in 1443, a band of marauders descended upon the village, torches blazing and swords drawn. They were remnants of the fallen Duke Varen's army. Desperate men turned to pillage. Elias fought valiantly, his hammer crushing skulls, but a crossbow bolt felled him mid-swing. Thorn, hidden in the forge, emerged with a red-hot poker, his rage a furnace. He slew 3 attackers that night, his first taste of blood, but the village burned, and he was left alone wandering the roads as a fugitive. For the marauder survivors branded him a murderer, Thorn found work as a mercenary. He joined the Iron Legion, a ragtag company of sellswords hired by minor lords to settle petty disputes. It was here he honed his skills in battle, learning the dance of steel from veterans scarred by 100 skirmishes. Captain Garrick, a grizzled warrior with a missing eye, took him under his wing. "You're no common brute, lad," Garrick said one evening by the campfire. "You've got a king's fire in you. But fire burns if not controlled." Thorn rose through the ranks, his reputation growing with each victory. By 1448, at 21, he commanded his own platoon, known for their unyielding discipline and tactical brilliance. That Eldoria's throne sat empty, contested by 3 claimants: Prince Reginald, Harlan's weak-willed nephew; Lady Eldoria, a cunning noblewoman with ties to foreign powers; and Lord Draven, a brutal warlord who ruled the northern marches with an iron fist. The land bled from their conflicts, taxes crushing the peasantry while knights clashed in endless tournaments of death. Thorn's turning point came during the Battle of Raven's Pass in 1450. Hired by Prince Reginald, the Iron Legion was outnumbered 3-1 by Lord Draven's forces. As arrows rained and cavalry charged, Thorn spotted a flaw in Draven's line: a narrow ravine unguarded. Rallying his men, he led a daring flank attack, his sword cleaving through armor like parchment. Draven's army shattered, and the warlord himself was captured, his head later mounted on a pike outside the capital. Etherhold Prince Reginald, grateful but envious, knighted Thorn on the battlefield. "Sir Thorne Blackwood," he proclaimed, "you have the heart of a lion." But Thorn saw the prince's frailty. Reginald was a puppet, manipulated by advisors who pocketed the kingdom's gold. Lady Eldoria, sensing Thorn's potential, approached him secretly in the weeks that followed. She was a vision of calculated beauty, with raven hair and eyes like polished emeralds. "Join me," she whispered in a candlelit tent. "Together we can forge a new Eldoria. Reginald is a fool. Draven was a beast. You could be more." Thorn refused, his loyalty bought but not his soul. Instead, he began to whisper among the mercenaries and disillusioned knights. "Why fight for lords who feast while we starve?" he asked. His words spread like wildfire through the camps. By 1452, Thorn had amassed a following: the Thorn Guard, named for the thorny vines that symbolized resilience in Eldoria's folklore. They were not mere soldiers but a brotherhood, bound by oaths of mutual aid and justice. Thorn's strategy was simple yet revolutionary: protect the villages, tax the corrupt nobles, and build alliances with the common folk. The tipping point arrived in the harsh winter of 1453. A famine gripped the land, exacerbated by Reginald's hoarding of grain for his court. Riots erupted in Etherhold, and Lady Eldoria seized the moment to march on the capital with her foreign-backed army. Thorn, now a force unto himself, intervened. At the siege of Etherhold, his Thorn guard scaled the walls under cover of night, using grapples forged in secret. Inside, they opened the gates not for Eldoria but for the starving masses. Chaos ensued. Reginald fled, Eldoria's forces clashed with Thorn's, and in the throne room, Thorn faced her in single combat. She was no warrior, but her dagger was poisoned, a viper's strike. Thorn disarmed her, his blade at her throat. "Yield and live," he said. Eldoria laughed bitterly. "You think you can rule? You're a blacksmith's son." But yield she did, exiled to her estates under guard. With the throne vacant, the Council of Elders, desperate for stability, offered it to Thorn. On a crisp spring day in 1454, he was crowned King Thorn, the name a nod to his humble origins and unbreakable spirit as king. Thorn's reign was marked by reform. He dismantled the old feudal system, establishing a council where merchants, farmers, and artisans had a voice alongside nobles. Taxes were fairer, roads were built to connect isolated villages, and education, once reserved for the elite, became accessible through monastic schools. But challenges abounded. In 1457, a rebellion stirred in the south, led by disgruntled lords loyal to Eldoria's memory. King Thorn rode out himself, his army a mix of professionals and levied citizens. At the Battle of Thornfield, named for the thorny battlefield, he turned the tide with a feigned retreat that lured the rebels into a trap. Victory was swift but merciful. He pardoned many, integrating them into his guard. Personal trials tested him too. In 1455 he married Lady Isolde, a scholarly woman from a minor house, whose intellect matched his strength. She bore him 2 sons, Harlan, named for the old king, and Elias for his father, and a daughter, Mira. Isolde's counsel was invaluable. She advocated for women's rights in inheritance and trade, reforms that bolstered the economy. Yet in 1462 tragedy struck when assassins, hired by foreign rivals envious of Eldoria's resurgence, poisoned her wine. Thorn's grief was profound, a storm that raged within. He hunted the perpetrators relentlessly, crossing borders into neighboring realms, forging uneasy alliances to root out the plot. By 1465, Eldoria flourished. Trade routes to the east brought silks and spices, while innovations in agriculture, irrigation systems inspired by ancient texts Isolde had studied, ended the famines. King Thorn established the Order of the Thorn, a knighthood dedicated to protecting the weak, their emblem a crowned vine. He was not without flaws. His temper could flare like the forge, and he distrusted magic, banning alchemists after a charlatan nearly caused a palace fire. Rumors whispered of his common blood, but his deeds silenced them. And his later years, as gray threaded his hair and scars mapped his body, King Thorn reflected on his path. In 1475 at 48, he faced his greatest threat, an invasion from the Empire of Valtor to the west, led by Emperor Cain, a conqueror with armies vast as the sea. The War of the Iron Crowns lasted 3 years, a grueling campaign of sieges and guerrilla tactics. Thorn's ingenuity shone. He used the Whisperwood's forests for ambushes, his scouts trained in stealth by woodsmen from Hollowbrook. At the decisive Battle of Elder Peak in 1478, Thorn led the charge, his war cry echoing off the mountains. Cain's forces broke, the emperor suing for peace. Peace brought prosperity, but age brought wisdom. Thorn abdicated in 1480, passing the crown to his son Harlan, now a capable young man schooled in both sword and scroll. Retiring to a modest estate near Hollowbrook, rebuilt and thriving, Thorn spent his days forging tools for farmers, teaching his grandchildren the anvil's song. He died in 1492 at 65 from a quiet illness, surrounded by family. His legacy endured. Eldoria became a beacon of stability, its kings forever measured against the blacksmith who rose to wear the crown. King Thorn's story is one of resilience, a testament that greatness is not born but forged in the fires of adversity. From the ashes of a village boy rose a monarch whose thorns protected rather than wounded, ensuring his kingdom bloomed eternal.